All right, welcome everyone to this morning's panel discussion in which we'll be talking about the current state of climate change negotiations and looking ahead to the COP18 discussions. And we have a fantastic panel today of a really wide variety of speakers from around the world, and I will just introduce them briefly. Starting on my right, or starting on my left is Adel Adim Lhafi, who's the High Commissioner for Water, Forests, and the Fight Against Deforestation for the government of Morocco. Monique Barbut is the former CEO of the Global Environmental Faculty, and she's currently a special advisor to the CEO of the Agence Française de Développement. Ashok Swain is the director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Uppsala University in Sweden, where he works on peace and conflict issues. Ambassador Olof Ehrenkrona is a senior advisor to the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Jamil Ahmad is secretary of the Governing Council of the UN Environment Programme and a former lead climate negotiator for the G77. And Jumeau is the ambassador for climate change and small island developing state issues for the government of the Seychelles. He's also the former ambassador to the United Nations and to the United States. I'll be your moderator today. My name is Joshua Keating, and I'm an editor at Foreign Policy magazine in Washington. Now, if you were to ask someone to design essentially a nightmare scenario from the perspective of global governance, you couldn't do much better than climate change. This is an issue which has the potential to devastate the lives of millions and wipe entire cities and perhaps even countries off the map. But it's also one that develops so slowly, so slowly in fact, that many of its effects will not be noticeable or even believable to much of the world's population until it's too late to take action. Moreover, taking meaningful action on climate change requires global agreements and partnerships between governments and private industry. But the very nature of the issue itself means that developed and developing countries are often pitted against each other in these discussions, and there's often inherent tension between governments and private industry. So it's no surprise that the global discussions on climate change are more often than not slow-going and marked by frustration, tension, and last-minute agreements that often look to the public like they're simply postponing action and planning for future discussions. However, lately, following the resolution of the conferences in Durban and Rio+20, there does seem to be a bit of a momentum shift, and we do seem to be in a place heading into Doha where there's at least some agreement on the frameworks of a final agreement. And one is reminded of Churchill's famous line about Americans that they can be counted on to do the right thing only after they've exhausted all the other alternatives. So the first question I'm going to pose to my panel is, how close are we to a point where we have exhausted all these alternatives? How optimistic are you feeling about the current state of negotiations, and what are your concerns heading into the Doha round? And we'll start with that question, then we'll move to a sort of free-flowing discussion, and then about half hour towards the end, I will go to the audience. So we'll start with Commissioner Lhafi.
Je vous remercie. Je pense que pour les négociations sur les changements climatiques d'une façon générale, moi je vois deux préoccupations majeures. La première, c'est d'abord notre rapport au temps, puisque quand on voit que la première sonnette d'alarme pratiquement a été donnée en 68 avec le Club de Rome, et puis le rapport de 72 qui a été immédiatement appris, suivi de la conférence des Nations Unies à Stockholm. Et je crois que le monde s'est mis en mouvement, d'abord pour prendre conscience des aspects environnementaux, et deuxièmement pour essayer de réveiller ce qu'on appelait à l'époque l'écologie politique, et qui a permis de prendre en charge les soucis de la cité d'une façon générale. Beaucoup de chemin a été parcouru jusqu'au sommet de Rio de 1992. Il y a eu, je crois, le premier acquis, c'est d'abord la notion de développement durable, puisqu'on est rentré dans une véritable prise en charge d'une pensée globale et de lier trois aspects essentiels, c'est-à-dire l'économie, l'environnement, et le troisième aspect dont on parle très peu, c'est l'aspect social. Mais depuis Rio 92, il me semble qu'après l'adoption des grandes conventions des Nations Unies, le rythme s'est ralenti puisqu'il y a très peu d'acquis quand on voit un peu le point, quand on fait le point, quand on voit les résultats. Rio+10 donc à Johannesburg en 2010, en 2002 sur le développement durable. Je crois que c'était la sonnette d'alarme a été donnée sur le peu des résultats de ces trois grandes conventions. Sur la biodiversité, qui est la deuxième convention, donc à Nagoya en 2010, je crois que les résultats aussi ne sont pas tout à fait à la hauteur des espérances. Donc on n'a pas réussi à endiguer l'érosion de la biodiversité, mais au contraire, elle a continué sur sa lancée. Et Rio+20, donc en 2012, je pense que la préoccupation majeure, et ça c'est d'ailleurs ma deuxième préoccupation, c'est une forme de mise à mal du concept même du développement durable. Le fait de parler d'économie verte, donc nous avons donné le sentiment qu'on voulait laisser de côté l'aspect social et de ne prendre en charge que l'aspect économique et l'aspect environnemental. Je crois que ce sentiment a été partagé en dehors des coulisses des négociations, notamment au niveau des sommets des peuples, et pour lequel je crois qu'on avait donné le sentiment qu'on voulait livrer les actifs écologiques et de les soumettre à la loi du marché, ce qui probablement n'est pas la bonne démarche pour essayer de remédier à cet aspect fondamental qui est l'aspect social, puisque la plupart des fractures de nos sociétés modernes sont principalement dues à cette fracture sociale. La crise financière puis la crise économique n'ont pas arrangé les choses puisqu'ils sont venus compliquer la situation. Et on a l'impression que les aspects écologiques sont passés au second plan puisqu'on ne les voit pas apparaître dans les débats politiques, dans les élections présidentielles, ni françaises ni américaines. Les aspects écologiques sont passés donc en dernier plan. Alors donc nous sommes devant une situation qui nous place devant la nécessité d'agir. D'abord au niveau de Doha, puisque c'est l'un des thèmes de ce matin. Il est impératif de trouver quelque chose qui permettrait de relayer le protocole de Kyoto et pour lequel nous n'avons toujours pas d'alternative fiable qui permet d'agir vite, puisque le temps presse. Copenhague, il y a eu quelques petits résultats, mais qui n'ont pas répondu aux grands espoirs. Cancun, pareil. Durban, donc il y a la plateforme de Durban. Et puis pour Doha de COP18, je crois que l'impératif majeur, c'est de trouver donc un supplétif donc, au protocole de Kyoto qui doit être élargi et actualisé, et en même temps d'opérer, comme cela a été dit, par la mise en place d'un texte contraignant qui doit être mis en place avant 2015 et qui devrait rentrer en vigueur en 2020. Et je crois que le temps presse. Le Club de Rome, qui fêtait il y a quelques mois son 40e anniversaire, prévoyait toujours l'effondrement économique vers 2030 et il est curieux qu'il ait très peu donc eu d'écho au niveau de la presse mondiale d'une façon générale. Je crois que le temps presse.
Bonjour à vous tous. Je dois dire que je partage assez je dirais, le pessimisme tranquille de mon prédécesseur. Clairement, il faut voir où nous en sommes depuis Durban. À Durban, on vous a dit et on nous a dit qu'il fallait maintenant négocier un accord post-Kyoto à 2020. Et on dit, mais on va s'engager en 2015. Voici la première supercherie. Quel est le gouvernement qui va accepter de prendre des engagements contraignants 5 ans à l'avance? Ça, je n'y crois pas une seconde. Deuxièmement, la position du principal pays émetteur, en tout cas dans le groupe des pays développés, qui est les États-Unis américains, sa position, elle ne changera pas. Je veux dire, les élections de M. Obama pour un deuxième terme ne feront pas que la position du Congrès américain, qui est toujours une position très dure par rapport à ces questions, évolue beaucoup. Et donc, en 2015, ce sera exactement le même Congrès américain qui aura à regarder les décisions de cette conférence. Troisième chose, je ne vois pas quels sont les éléments que nous avons aujourd'hui qui peuvent nous permettre de dire que les 3 blocs de pays développés, en transition, en voie de développement, changeront leur attitude ou leur positionnement entre Durban et 2015. Rien ne montre cette route. Quatrième chose, le problème, c'est que la Convention des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques négocie suivant un système qui est un système dépassé. Aujourd'hui, le système au travers lesquels on doit signer des conventions et des protocoles de mise en œuvre ne fonctionne pas. En réalité, tout ceci était une attente, effectivement, de la grande conférence de Rio en 1992. Et depuis, ce que nous avons vu, c'est que nous n'arrivons plus à faire signer véritablement de grandes conventions globales. Alors, est-ce que c'est ça le système de négociation? Quatrièmement, je crois que sur les questions d'argent qui sont le nerf de la guerre, il y a un malentendu complet entre, d'un côté, les pays développés et de l'autre, les pays en développement. Et ce malentendu est lié à ce qu'est le fonds vert. Pour la plupart des pays en développement, l'idée, c'était quand même qu'il existe un énorme fonds. On a parlé de 100 milliards par an pour couvrir les besoins, en particulier des plus pauvres, et en particulier sur les questions d'adaptation. Cette idée de 100 milliards de dollars qui passerait par un fonds n'a jamais été l'idée de quel que soit le pays développé. Pour les pays développés, certes, ok, allons vers un nouveau fonds, peut-être plus important que celui que j'avais l'honneur de diriger, qui était le GEF, mais qui resterait quelque chose d'extrêmement minime par rapport aux besoins. L'idée, pour les pays développés, c'est de dire, allons vers des subventions pour les PMA, mais faisons du prêt, faisons du financement innovant, faisons du secteur privé pour les pays plus avancés, et en tout cas certainement pour les grands pays émergents. Et donc, cette question de fonds verts, lorsque il sera connu les montants qui vont se déverser dans ce fonds, je crois, créeront à nouveau une crispation. Enfin, vous allez bientôt avoir la sortie d'un rapport du GIEC qui doit voir le jour, je crois, en 2014, peut-être début 2015. Donc trop tard, déjà, pour que les résultats soient intégrés dans n'importe quel accord en 2015. Et par ailleurs, les nouvelles de ce rapport risquent fort d'être extrêmement mauvaises, puisque, a priori, le fameux 2 degrés qui était dans les textes de Copenhague sera de toutes les façons largement dépassé. Donc, la question de savoir maintenant, est-ce que oui ou non, on a envie d'avoir un accord sur le climat? Si la réponse est non, eh ben, on peut continuer en avançant comme nous avons commencé à le faire. Si en réalité, on souhaite aller vers un accord climat, je pense qu'il faut se poser des questions de méthode de travail. Et je pense que, clairement, à côté des Nations Unies, il faut qu'il y ait une réflexion sur des solutions négociées par les principaux acteurs de cette convention. Alors ça peut être un style G20, mais ce n'est pas forcément le G20 qui devrait prendre cette question, parce que je pense que, par exemple, et je suis sûre que notre ami du Seychelles le dira, je pense que les pays insulaires devraient avoir un mot important à dire dans une négociation qui est faite de façon plus resserrée. Et donc, je pense aussi, on le dit souvent, mais qu'il serait important que la négociation soit élargie au ministère du plan pour les pays récipiendaires et certainement au ministère du développement et pour tout le monde au ministère des Finances quant à la négociation, je dirais, sur un certain nombre de points techniques qui sont les points d'accrochage de cette enceinte. Deuxièmement, je pense que le secteur privé a une marge d'action importante sur les questions des changements climatiques. Et je pense qu'on pourrait imaginer de créer un pacte avec le secteur privé pour que vous ayez une approche plus bottom-up que celle que nous voyons et sur laquelle nous travaillons aujourd'hui dans les enceintes des Nations Unies. À cet égard, pour ceux qui ont suivi Rio, eh bien, à Rio, clairement, je veux dire, l'enthousiasme, le dynamisme de la réunion est venu de ce qu'on appelle les parties prenantes, les stakeholders en anglais, qui étaient bien plus préparés et qui avaient bien plus d'idées que n'en avaient les gouvernements. Eh bien, prenons acte et essayons de développer autour de ça un pacte avec justement ce que nous appelons la société civile. Enfin, je crois qu'il ne faut pas faire miroiter de solutions uniques. Le marché, par exemple, ne peut pas être à lui seul une solution, mais il doit faire partie de la solution. Et donc, il faut sortir maintenant de la démarche idéologique, et cela s'adresse un peu à tout le monde. À mon avis, c'est un ensemble d'outils et de dispositifs qu'il va falloir négocier, et avec une question centrale, est-ce qu'on peut réussir sans contrainte? Est-ce qu'on peut réussir uniquement sur le postulat du volontariat? L'Union européenne aujourd'hui a montré une voie, certes, mais quid des autres? Que vont faire les grands pays émergents? Sont-ils capables de signer entre eux des accords du type que nous avons vu dans l'Union européenne? Et donc, il va falloir trouver une solution qui va passer par une négociation qui va associer des mesures macroéconomiques pour la croissance et l'équité, et de l'autre côté, des mesures environnementales. On doit aussi discuter des engagements des pays émergents. Il est totalement illusoire aujourd'hui de dire ce sont les pays développés qui sont les pays historiquement responsables et c'est donc sur eux que doit poser le poids complet des mesures. Aujourd'hui, le premier émetteur au monde, c'est la Chine. Je veux dire, il doit faire partie d'une solution. Ceci étant, ce que je viens de vous dire, cela fâche énormément dès lors qu'on se retrouve dans les enceintes de la Convention des changements climatiques. Mais sans un engagement des grands émergents, il ne pourra pas y avoir un accord. Par ailleurs, clairement, dans ces négociations, les logiques de groupe ne fonctionnent plus. Qu'est-ce que le groupe des 77, par exemple, dans une enceinte des changements climatiques? Est-ce que vous croyez vraiment que l'intérêt du Burkina Faso, aujourd'hui, c'est le même que celui du Mexique dans ce type de négociation? Et donc, il va falloir faire un menu aussi, très spécifique, suivant le type de pays dans lesquels on travaille. Il va falloir explorer l'acceptation de conditions qui nous permettent aussi d'avoir des objectifs sans engagement contraignant. Je pense en particulier à toutes les clauses de suivi, vérification suivi de sanctions, ce qu'on appelle le MRV en anglais. Et enfin, je pense qu'il faudra un système qui garantit une part des emprunts des États au prorata de leurs efforts pour le climat. Et en gros, ce que donnera le fonds vert devra être lié très clairement aux engagements que les pays qui demanderont un appui financier de ce fonds feront eux-mêmes pour arriver à faire en sorte que nous trouvions une solution. Voilà.
Thank you. I will follow the same trend of pessimism, though of course I have a few points to disagree on with my previous speakers. As you know, I mean, as we have already discussed, that there are several meetings which have already taken place on this issue, climate summits. The climate COP18 taking place a couple of weeks after in Doha. We have already 17 COPs. There are several preparatory meetings. Since 1972, there have been several environmental summits, Rio, then Johannesburg, then Rio+20. These conferences, these summits, creates a lots of hype, and hype creates a lot of hope. Hope doesn't really lead into translate into the concrete actions, and that creates despair, that creates anger, that creates frustrations, that creates why we will go to these kind of summits. I remember a couple of years, 3 years back, when the Copenhagen Climate Summit created a lot of hope, lots of hype. And immediately after that, the desperations came large. We all started asking questions, is this the right way to go? There is no question about the climate change. Of course, there is a lot of discussions and debates taking place. For the first time, after several months, President Obama opened his mouth about climate change. Is this the, what is there? Is it something which is concrete or something we are just trying to go around? There will be a national discourse. We all know that where it leads to, how it goes. The climate change is a certainty, is a reality. And the countries, those who are going to suffer from it, they didn't cause it. The 50 poorest countries do contribute only 1% of the global greenhouse emissions. But they are the ones who are going to suffer. They have nothing to do with this climate change, but they are the ones who will suffer. And they are not even contributing significantly or anyway to this climate change negotiations, though they are trying hard. Why this is happening? This raises a serious questions. Of course, the bullies are around. The bullies, there are big countries, powerful countries, developed, developing, rapidly developing, but these poor countries, they are being bullied all through. There is a power difference exists there. There is also, when you look at these climate conferences, you go there, you see the people, you see the process. The small countries, they do not have the capacity even to participate in the negotiation in a proper way. They do not have their manpower. They do not have the diplomats, those who can really go into the simultaneous complex meetings taking place in different aspects of the climate change. They are quite smart people, but they don't have that many people to go into there. If you look at the large, big countries sending it, the plane loads of the people, taking up the whole floors of the hotels where the conference is taking place, and you compare that the countries of Africa or small countries from Asia and Latin America, then you see there is a strong, serious questions to be raised about this issue. But of course, there are differences, as you said. What is the group? There are differences within the groups. We all know that. There is no clear-cut demarcation between the developing, the south, north, west, east, whatever. But there is a very simple difference exists between the developed and developing world. And that the difference is how fast and how much the greenhouse emissions we will cut, And if we agree on that, who is going to monitor it? It's very simple. It sounds very simple, but is it that simple? It's not, because we have made a mistake of thinking that these are very simple things, we get into an agreement, but these are not, because we need to realize what is behind it. Because these two principles are connected to the larger principle of a state and society. The society means the lifestyle. It affects the lifestyle, and it affects the sovereignty. In the lifestyle front, North doesn't want to give up, and South wants to catch up. How you bring them together? In the sovereignty front, there is a huge amount of mistrust. It goes back to the centuries. And how to breach that trust? Is that these are the issues we always think that this is, you're just cutting the greenhouse gases, we'll bring out some things, we'll make some kind of fund, we will bring out this rate plus whatever. But these are all not exactly filling up the kind of our commitment or our responsibility to how to address to the climate change issues. I was discussing with someone who was responsible for organizing COP7 in Marrakesh 2001. And I was trying to see what has been the difference in the last 10 years. The difference is actually, I agree with that, because before we used to discuss on the fact or the reality. Now we are talking on the perceptions. What is the perceptions about the climate change? And the perception, if you look at the perceptions, there is a big difference of the perceptions. Perceptions of the developed world and the developing countries. And you're dealing with the perceptions, dealing in a territory which changes quite fast. So where we are leading to? That raises serious questions. Is Doha going to bring any result or not? But, if you see this, is there any commitment? Is there really interest of any party to get an agreement going? Or we are just doing it for, we just like it because it looks good in front of others. And this is what I think everyone is interested, to a large extent, the powerful ones, of dealing with the business as usual approach. Because business as usual favors the people, those who have the, they do have it, or they have already almost achieved it. And this is where the question comes, are we really doing enough? There is nothing, it's not a very complicated questions to answer why we have failed in this. I think we need to simply ask these questions, are we doing enough? And if we are not doing enough, who is not doing enough? Thank you.
If I could ask just to hold applause to the end, just so we can move quickly through this. But Ambassador Ehrenkrona.
Thank you. I will try to be slightly more optimistic than the previous speakers. Maybe I will be the odd man out, but I'll have to face it then. If I look at the Swedish position before the COP in Doha, we want a balanced outcome. We want a ratifiable amendment to the Kyoto Protocol for a second commitment of the second period. And we believe that a closure of the AWG and the LCA track should be done. We believe it is necessary to have some sort of progress in the negotiation of a new global legally binding agreement from 2020. And we very much believe that we need to discuss actions to close the ambition gap on the track to reach our common 2-degree target. And the mitigation gap, which is still there, is one of those areas which we give certain priority. Is this then a realistic ambition? Yes, I believe so. If you look at the whole issue of climate change from the perspective of international politics, you can, I agree with the previous speaker, then you can be slightly pessimistic. But if you look at the global discussion as such, and what has been done in the business community and with regard to technological development, I believe that you can be much more optimistic. Let's face it, it is a very, very difficult challenge to work with this three-dimensional picture. You have first you have the international policy paradigm, where you have to get almost 200 nations to come together and formulate legally binding convention. You have the national paradigm, where on the national level, different priorities meet. I mean, you have the priority of developing the welfare of the country, you have the ambition to fight poverty, and you have, of course, the ambition to be a part of an international process fighting climate change. But when these priorities compete, and when you have to have a legitimate policy towards in your own political context, then, of course, it is another ball game than compared to sitting on international meetings and make promises. And then, of course, you have the market paradigm. What we are doing now is actually try to combine a top-down process of international politics, in many respects also a top-down process in national politics, with the necessary bottom-up process that really should solve this. Because meetings will never develop any technology. Meetings will never implement the technological solutions that can create a low-carbon society in the future. It's only people, businesses, companies, customers that could make this a realistic target. And we should not underestimate the difficulties with combining the top-down regulatory framework with the necessary bottom-up market economy framework. We need well-functioning markets. We need creative environments. We need freedom of thought, and we need entrepreneurship to realize the necessary change. We will never be able to agree on policies that forces our economies to stagnate or even go backwards. We will never be able to reinvent the low-carbon economy of the past. We must invent the low-carbon economy of the future. The richer countries, the welfare societies, will not, since they are also democracies, their electorate will not accept policies that undermine their welfare. And the poorer countries, from their perspective, will, and rightly so, not accept to be hampered in their efforts to fight poverty and promote a decent living for their citizens. We have to combine these ambitions, and how do we do it? I think that we must find the rules and the rulings that do not distort markets and the freedom of research and innovation. On the contrary, the rules must enhance competition and stimulate new solutions in every field of human activity. And one of the good things with the debate that we have had the last 10 years is that there is a strong global consensus among people that something has to be done in order to create a low-carbon development. But this can only be done within the framework of highly decentralized and open structures in the societies that provides a fertile ground for individuals' mind to create and invent the necessary solutions and implement the necessary solution. I believe it is possible, definitely. It is indeed possible. One reason is that we are lucky enough to live in a period of exceptional inventive capacity globally. We live in the midst of the scientific revolution 3.0 and are actually also able to feel the first breezes, I would say, of the scientific revolution in 4.0, which could be called the quantum age. I don't know how many of you that have the latest iPhone. If you have it, I congratulate you, because you are wearing $4 billion in computing capacity. In 1976, the computing capacity in this tiny piece was actually worth $4 billion US. $4 billion US, you could probably have bought Ericsson for it on the stock market those days. And the predecessor had just as much computing capacity as the NASA had when it landed the first man on the moon. And the greeting card sings happy birthday to you has just as much computing capacity that the whole computing capacity that was disposable for the Allied forces in 1945. And we heard before how the shale gas and shale oil revolution is a game changer on the global energy market. I would say never underestimate the consequences and the capacity of technological development. We live basically, or we are utilizing the great breakthroughs of the 20th century, particularly in ICT and life sciences. The transistor leading to the microchip, DNA leading to the sequencing of the human genome, and the prime mover for these technologies is the determining the capacity for implementation of these two groundbreaking results of basic research is, of course, the software revolution of the 1940s. We should note that the software revolution was independent of the hardware. It was developed as a highly abstract mathematical reasoning based on the idea that you, by digital coding, can transmit abstract information through physical conductors. Today, it is obvious that a field like synthetic biology, that was used to be called genetic engineering, is heavily dependent on computing capacity and smarter software. But this is equally valid for other research areas of vital importance for the development of climate-smart technologies, such as materials, such as robotics, and such as optics. Materials is obvious with regard to climate-smart solutions. You need developments in order to produce or transfer energy. Solar cells, superconductors, batteries, and you need it to economize the use of energy. Last week, actually, we had another breakthrough in power transmission. ABB announced that they had made a construction that would make them able to break the current flows of 1 gigawatt in 3 milliseconds. And if that will also hold commercially, that will totally change the transmission capacity, for example, in Europe with regard to renewable energy sources. So what we heard today, that you need investments in transmission in order to develop the renewable, is gradually very much coming true. And it's a groundbreaking technology in high voltage DC. And this is just one example of what is happening all over the world with new technological solutions made by the businesses that understands the necessity to create the low carbon economy of the future. So while we are struggling with the international dialogue on conventions and targets and legally binding constructions, there is a lot of things going on out there that gives us a very much brighter future. I have identified 5 areas that create synergies between them. And all these 5 areas are bound together by the software revolution. The narrow sector today is not hardware. The narrow sector today is right now software. The capacity of the human mind to develop smart enough software in order to utilize our physical capacity. So, and this is changing fast enough as well. When Newton was alive, we had 600 scientists globally. Today there are 6 million scientists working globally on these matters. This is also something to take into consideration. So I would basically say that the future is brighter than we tend to believe when we look on this from the international, from the horizon of international politics.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ahmad?
Thank you very much, and it's good to be back in this interesting debate. Monique told us that when she referred to the first speaker as quite pessimism, before expressing her own so unquite pessimism, and then we moved to the third speaker who was very expressed pessimism. Slowly we are moving to the other direction because my predecessor has just mentioned his guarded optimism. I'm going to be a bit more than that. We have moved a long way on this path since the concept of sustainable development came into currency. And just to go back a bit, what is the concept of sustainable development? It is the most common definition is that it is development which takes into account the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to address their needs. Yes, this global warming is a challenge, and a big challenge. Climate change has been a big challenge, and it remains a big challenge. But things have moved. Since the first conference in Rio in 1992 to the one just held 5 months ago, the world has not sat idle. Global warming is just one aspect of sustainable development, and the world has been moving in many platforms and in many directions and in many levels. We have more than 500 multilateral environmental agreements which are addressing some aspect of environment and climate and sustainable development. We have so many supplementary channels which come to support the process of climate change under the convention. You look at the regional commissions of UN, you look at organizations like UNEP, which I represent, you look at the processes like the Group of 20 and Group of 8 and EU and G77 and others, all of them have acted in a way which will tend to support the work of the international community in addressing climate change. And Rio, just 5 months ago, has reaffirmed at international level this commitment to work towards a solution for it. It may still be some distance away. COP18, I don't think will have a magic potion to turn things around overnight. We will still work, but if indicators from the recent few months and few years are anything to go by, I'm very sanguine. I'm hopeful that this process will slowly but gradually go to address this issue in a more substantive and meaningful way. I was just, for a short while, I was in the opening ceremony, and there I heard how much is invested into renewables, while at the same time, how much is being done on resource efficiency, even in those countries which are dependent on fossil fuels. And Joshua referred to my earlier responsibilities in the G77. It is an amazing group. I think the ambassador will speak about it in more detail. I'm no more central player there. But it was amazing to see how interest with different groups to which Monique referred come under one table and present a common position. Whether those are countries in small islands or big countries or emerging economies, but that is a help towards the main process, and the main process is the Framework Convention. And again, I would say from the first Rio Convention, when this convention was born, when the Climate Convention was born, to the recent one, now in Rio we had climate change reflected in all important areas of sustainable development, whether that was energy, whether that was water, oceans, resource efficiency, climate change. So now climate change is all over, as it should be. And the international community, I would say, has given a good momentum to it. Green economy, for example, was mentioned. And UNEP has been the pioneer of the work in green economy. And green economy is to be considered, as we are told, in the context of poverty eradication and sustainable development. A lot of work has gone into it, is still going into it. Just last year, if I'm not wrong, the figure was $368 billion, which has been investment in green technologies, in green investments. And this is producing results. I'm told Germany, despite investing in green economy, produced more than 380,000 jobs. So this is not a phenomena which would exclude employment or which would have negative impressions on the economy and development. The sustainable development concept has come of age. And I think in Doha, we are going to at least move a step forward, if not stay at the same position. The commitment period, the second commitment period, whether that is beginning soon or whether it is beginning a few years' time, whether that will be for a definite period of 5 years or 7 years, and whether the long-term action is going to be defined in another way. These are bits and pieces of a big mechanism, and of course, there will be challenges, there are challenges, but I'm hopeful that we will have a good result.
Thank you. Finally, Ambassador Jumeau.
Thank you, Joshua. From Rio+20 to COP18. I'm speaking from the point of view of one of the smallest island states in the world, certainly the smallest country in Africa, and in terms of population, the 11th smallest country in the world. Rio+20 delivered more than we expected going into Rio+20, especially for the SIDS, the small island developing states, and especially for oceans. And oceans are very important for SIDS because whilst we are small island developing states in terms of land area, we are large ocean countries in terms of the ocean territory we control through our exclusive economic zones. So we came out of Rio feeling maybe a sense of reinvigoration. And now going into COP18, what has happened